So last week we started the Graz Perish al Agados. We came in on Aggadah number 14, which is actually the middle of a story. And at this point in the story, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania is in Athens, and the elders of Athens ask him to build here it is. Nope, a little earlier. Here it is, to build a palace in the air of the world. And we were trying to understand what's this palace in the air of the world. So I really think that his explanation starts a couple of lines later when he talks about pass me up right. He says Hashem's name. He hovers in the air. He hovers between Shemayim and earth. It doesn't actually use the word air on that line. And then it says, and then he asks them to pass him the bricks and mortar, right? I think the Graz analysis actually starts with the bricks and mortar because he uses a pasuk from Zechariah to tie this discussion to the land of Shinar, because these two women were what's it called? She has she tells the protagonist, tells Zechariah to build him a house that's between she flies between heaven and earth and asks for a house that's in the land of Shinar. Land of Shinar is where they build the Tower of Bavel with Chomer and Levanim. Right, this is the first time we see building with bricks as opposed to pre-existing stone. So I really think that that's why he's focusing on the land of Shinar. And then he talks about what heaven and earth and the air in between is, which is really where we got to putting this Gemara. I'm busy pointing and stuff, and I didn't share screen. Yeah. So here we are. In the land of Shinar, right here, in the generation where he, and there's Ariel, in the generation, the Dar HaFlaga, right? The scattering, the languages, that generation. They go to Shinar, they make Levanim. And that's the first real occurrence of Levanim. And in fact, there are Rishonim talk about Levanim as being invented for this purpose, with ideas like they didn't want to use God's stone. They wanted it to be entirely artificial. They're challenging God, but this is so I think the Chomer and Levanim is what is being tied to the story, because the story talks about Yeshua ben Hanania asking the elders of Athens to pass him Levanim and mortar. That's why V'zeha inyan asher sham vasikuli livni v'tina. Okay, so I thought I came up with some insight, but it turns out the Gra says it outright. Now, this building is between heaven and earth in the air. And to the Gra, this is a reference to the three aspects of the soul: Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. Nefesh, he is comparing to the earth, because Nefesh is Ba'hataval inyanim hagufaniyim. That is where physical desire resides. So it's kind of earthy. And Neshama, he's tying to heaven. I'm going out of order because that was how I presented it to begin with. And Ruach is the air, not just metaphorically, not just because the word Ruach means wind, because Neshima is a breath, and Nefesh is also the still air, but because it's in the middle. And last time when we were talking about this idea, before I get to the 3 watches. When we were talking about this idea, we got into a discussion of the middle. There's also something the Maharal had ended with, where he talked about the Torah as being the middle, right? And that's how it was a parallel to the 3rd item on Anshe Knesset Aggadah's list, right? That there was this idea of middle. Jordy was like, I'm not really into synthesis. And I said, let's just leave it at middle, because middle could be a synthesis or it could be an unresolvable dialectic. You're just saying it's where the 2 ends meet. So it's kind of a more generic, more multi-purpose term than what's called, which got me to the idea that maybe we should take a detour to discuss middles. The idea that I mentioned last week, I want to look at inside. So we're going to take a digression and look at Rav Eliyahu Dessler's Kunteras HaBechira. So there's a section of Michtav Eliyahu, Volume 1, which is titled Kunteras HaBechira, like it's a standalone notebook or pamphlet on the topic of free will. Chapter 2 talks about Nekudas HaBechira, which means a Bechira point, the decision point. And I think it's very relevant to how I understand the Gra. May not be relevant to what the Gra meant to say, but it's what I think he's saying. So here, where my pointer is, when 2 nations fight, the war is on the point of the border between them, the battlefront. Anything that's behind the point of the standing, meaning let's stick with battlefront and not get too literal. The battlefront of one army, is entirely under the control of that army. And there's no war there. Actually, know of a story where that wasn't true, where Israeli soldier, I saw the soldier in Rambam Hospital in Haifa. He was all shot up in the back. So I asked him what happened. He said he went to sleep. The battlefront moved while he was sleeping. He didn't know about it. He was like, between rocks or someplace not obvious. He woke up, he stood up, and he was behind enemy lines. So they turned around and shot him. But normally there's no war when you get beyond, right? That's the norm, right? There's no war when you get to where the army is camped and not at the actual battlefront. And similarly on the other side with the other army. This rule doesn't change. Even if one army succeeds once in one battle, but and pushes the other army back. When the battle resumes, the war goes on wherever they stopped the last time in the last battle. And only they're going to be fighting where the 2 armies meet. Because it's Nikudas at the point where the 2 are near each other. The same is true with free will. The bechira of a person rests in the field of battle between where his truth collides with his imagination. There's a lot to unpack there but I don't want to go on a detour to the detour. He develops the word truth to go well beyond its naive meaning in ways that Only some of them I'm comfortable with, personally. And Dimyon as the force for evil dates back to Rav Yisrael Salanter, who talks about the idea of the Yetzer Hara being associated with Dimyon. Dimyon is imagination, but it's also, it's like it's tied to physical desire because it's very gashmi. It's not knowing about the color red, it's experiencing red. We use the word imagination nowadays. John, I see your lips, but you're muted. So if you're trying to say something, unmute. What was I going to say? Yeah, the power of Dimyon is, we think of imagination nowadays as like you see things that aren't there, where you pretend things that aren't there. And Dimyon in Greek thought, the word imagination in Greek thought refers to the power to experience sensory information as experiences, not as ideas. So I was saying, to know what it is like to see something red, like that old chestnut, how do you know that my blue is your blue? Maybe you see blue the way I see green. That old chestnut is based on the idea that we communicate in words and not in experience, not in dimyon. So dimyon, therefore, ends up very, very gashmi. Okay, and so it also lacks some discipline that thought and tokens and deductive reasoning has. So Rabbi Yisrael marries it to the Yetzer Hara. What were you going to say, Jordy? I just wasn't.
So I'll have to look at the word up. It's probably linked to the word idea and so forth, because it could be that, or I'm also thinking of diamond, but that is not that is not the correct ending. This is it comes. Okay. It's also but it's probably if it has a Greek link, it would
doesn't.
Be yeah. And then it's related to dome. Okay, it's related to dome. I got it.
Yeah, it's a conjugation of dome.
Great, thank you.
So that's the okay. So it's because it's the ability to have an image of the apple inside your head.
Correct.
So that's why it's like dome. But anyway, whatever the two armies are, we're only using this to get the idea of middle. So to refocus from like, looking at what did chapter 1 discuss and where does he discuss what MS is, and then getting into arguments because I don't like everything he says about what MS is. Let's just look at the fact that he's talking about the place of free will is where there's conflict.
One thing is Dimyon related to Koach and Madame, which is like the Koach of dreams, which can be used for positive things like Yosef.
Not only I don't think it's associated. I think it's identified.
Identified. All right, because
Dimyon, I think it's just a shorter name of the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, because in the modern sense, certainly imagination is viewed as a vital and generally positive thing.
Well, Rav Yisrael Salanter talks about serving God with your Yetzer Hara. So the fact that he identifies it with the Yetzer Hara just means that it is the thing that tends to lead you astray. It's not all bad with no positive to it. You understand what I mean? Okay.
Right.
So the war in a person is only there. Ulamrov ma'asav einam tachas eish hatot chanim. Most of his actions are not under battle fire. Rov ma'asav munachim b'medina ha'adira hamishtaras me'achorei tzva lochamim. Most of a person's actions are in the quiet area that is far behind where the armies are fighting. So I'll give you I'm teaching, Shoops. That's sliding for my teaching. Shubi, I need to do this, okay? I asked you, right? We'll talk afterwards. So the the mashal I usually give is you go into a store, you see a beautiful $1,000 watch. You really want the watch, right? But it never crosses your mind. I'm assuming, I mean, I'm not judging you if it does cross your mind, but I'm assuming that nobody on this call, when they see a $1,000 watch in the store, start thinking about whether or not they should shoplift it. Right? It's so far away from our Nekudas HaBechira, right? You know, the desire to take it is nowhere near the desire to do the right thing. And so there's no conflict and there's no conscious thought about it. And in Rav Dessler's terms, there's no free will. There's no Bechira Chavshi involved in that decision. So he's defining Bechira Chavshi in a very, very rationalist term, which is unsurprising. He's a Mussernik. And Musser is all about, like things that are very rational, midos and so on. But in any way, he's taking it very rationalistic. If you feel yourself making a decision, it's a free will decision. If the decision happens preconsciously, in what sense is that free will? Right? You have no control over your preconscious decision, so it must not be free will decision. If Jordy, you know the Libet experiment, Benjamin Libet's experiment.
I believe so. That's the one in, was it in Stanford or so forth? I don't recall. Well, you tell me.
Right. So he had people push a button.
Yes.
When a dot went to a certain point in a circle, and he noticed, and he had them under MRI, and he noticed that the brain fired on average, I think, a third of a second before they registered the fact that they decided to push the button.
Yeah, I understand. There's this whole discussion whether free will is an illusion or not. If we have already decided without realizing it.
Right. Well, there's another possibility, and that is that free will is a real thing, but realizing that you made a free will decision is a second iteration that takes 300ths of a second.
Correct.
That's possible, right? 3.3, whatever, 300 millis, not 300ths. More like a third of a second. So there's other possibilities. Maybe we don't have free will, we have won't. So the second that you decide you might be pushing the button, the neuron starts firing, but then you can decide not to push it. There's many different answers, but Rav Dessler avoids the question because in that experiment, there's no real conflict. And he doesn't expect that to be a free will decision.
Of course.
If not every decision is free will, then Libet's experiment doesn't disprove anything. It's just interesting to me. I thought you would be the one to have known the discussion around it. That's why I brought you in there.
Thank you. I heard it. I have heard it, but I didn't have it on my mind.
Okay. I've known this long enough that I knew it when I read an article on Libet's experiment. So, like, to me, it was the reverse, right? So when I was fishing for how to explain free will, it was one of the things in my toolkit already. Anyway, Rov Ma'asav Munachim B'din. We said that. B'makom bo eina emes v'asheker nifgashim klal. Truth and falsehood don't collide there. Ki yesh harbei min ha'emes she'adam mechunach la'asos v'lo yalel dato lishanos. Many things a person was educated to do, it wouldn't cross his mind to do otherwise. And there's plenty of bad things that he doesn't even think about as being bad. So one person may have a nekudas of bechira that I said would be about shoplifting watches. Something that's more applicable to most of us would be have certain lines on the 1040, right? On the 1040, Jordy, on the IRS tax form.
Oh,
right. Tax reporting may be where more of our nekudas habechira comes up, because it's already there are judgment calls to make on file. Like not everything is rigorously defined to begin with. So that may be your Nikudas Abechira issue, right? Somebody else's Nikudas Abechira may not be on being totally honest on taxes. It may be on whether they give 180 or 360 to their shul that week. Everybody has their own decision point. It's at different places. But there is for each person a set of conflicts where the battle happens. And that is where free will is. So what I'm pointing out is free will is a middle feature. Right? It only happens in that territory we call the middle. Not at either, not at, so let me finish this and then I'll finish that thought. We'll finish this paragraph and then we'll close up the digression with more Micha. V'chein be'inyan hachinuch. Hachinuch harishoni shel adam, person's initial education, matziv oso b'nekudas bechira misuyemes, puts him in a particular, puts his bechira point in a particular place. Yesh va'adam mischanech la'arbei minatov. There's one person who's lucky and is educated on a lot of doing good. Mashagorim l'ma'avkav l'nekudas bechira shelo lios be'inyanim hayoser gavohim, to be in higher places. The dugma adam shenischanek ben anshe maila, person who was educated among elevated people. Nekudas bechira so lote klal ben yane bitul mitzvah sasek buros. He wouldn't think of not doing a mitzvah sasek. Wouldn't cross his mind not to wear tefillin that day. Ela bitikvius dictokehem. I will pretend I said it right. Bitikvius dictokehem. In punctualist detail. See, I couldn't say it in either language. And what kind of kavana he has when he does it. And somebody else can be raised in a slightly lower level. Person can be raised in a city of thieves. Some of us even grew up in New York. Etzlo klal lotia bechira im lignov ol lachtol. It wouldn't cross his mind to have a choice whether to steal. V'yoser mikach yitachen unekudas bechira tia bein lertzoach o hanigzal al yado bein lav. The guy could even be deciding whether to kill somebody or rob him or not. Right? So, sorry, I got that wrong. The free will is not whether or not to rob him. It's whether to kill the guy he robbed. Right? You could get pretty low. Someone could get pretty low, not you guys. Shamhi Melchemes Yitrav. This is the battle of his Yitzarim. Shamhi Nekudas Bechira. That's where the free will point is. Shalo Uba Alav Liskaber. Nimtza, so it comes out. Education doesn't change. Your background doesn't change the basic concept of free will. It only changes the location. And every person has the ability to choose between truth and falsehood wherever it is that they stand. And that's where he has to stand his ground and not give in. It makes no difference what that position is. Because recognizing the truth is a person's job wherever they stand. Times that the place of his decision will change from previous decisions. Asher al yedei nitzcho behem o tevusaso, by winning a war or losing it. So let's say the guy succeeds in not shoplifting that watch. Next time it becomes that much harder, that much easier to resist the temptation. Eventually it becomes harder for him. Instead of less easy, becomes harder. And over time, right, the battlefront moves. Okay, I'm busy. Later. Okay, get out. If you have to do that, you have to get out, sweetie. Who's nekudas habechira lamala or lamata? So the decision point moves up or down, which is kind of a mixed metaphor because the battlefront goes forward and back. But you know what he's saying, right? The person could be on a higher level or a lower level. Ulam im kain, im kach ve'im kach. By and by, kayemis nekudas habechira ve'omedes l'chol echad b'asher hu. Still, everybody has their decision point, and it stands wherever it is. Davar zeh mefurash hu b'Torah. This is explicit in the Torah. I placed life and death before you. Pirusho, explaining, Hachinuch v'asaviva, education and cause, education and surroundings, nature and nurture. No. Education and surroundings is not really nature and nurture. Mizuk hamidos, the temperature of one's midos, or the mixture of midos. Hanesunim basisiyim she'enam tachash litach. The fundamentals that are given fundamentally, not under your control. The genetic predisposition, like this guy was born with a bad temper. Haim elu akrum lachayim. Osam nasati lefnecha. That I place before you. So when it says hamaves v'achayim nasati lefnecha, that is what you're born with, or what the environment God plunked you in gave you. Aval uvecharta b'chayim. You should choose life. That truth, that balance between truth and falsehood that you were born into. You, by choosing good, can choose more life. So even though the pasuk starts by saying, I placed life before you, still choose life and move the decision point toward the side of good. This is also an explanation of a saying of Chazal. Hakol bidei shamayim, everything's in the hands of heaven. Chutz miyir shamayim. That's the end of the quote. Right? Kol nisune adam. Hamelkom alav nolad ubo ischanech. All of the placement of a person, where they were born, where they got educated, yichalaso hapizius, hargashas vasichlius, a person's physical, emotional, mental abilities, tchunos hafu haofe basisuyos, hamushrashosbo, all of the fundamental abilities that are placed in him, hakol bidei shamayim. All of that is in the hands of heaven. Aval chutz miyir shamayim. Except Yir Shamayim, Osa tzarech adam lahagbir b'leiv atzmo, that a person has to strengthen in his own heart, l'kadem atzmo ba, to advance in it, litol es hayicholes, to grab the ability, liyavek ala emes, shelo b'kirbas hayetzer al avodas v'yes Hashem v'chein l'netzach, v'gam l'netzach, l'natzeach, to win. Not eternally. Gamla Natseach also to win. So that is his idea of the middle. So the middle between the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara is where free will resides. It's a dialectic middle. It's not a synthesis middle, right? And notice that is where free will resides. The reason why I find this interesting is the Gra's treatment of Ruach, because Ruach Can people see my mouse? You can nod, John, without unmuting. Is my mouse showing up on the share screen? Haruach ba hakavod v'akina. That is where honor and jealousy reside. Third column in Amuda Bet. Second column. Third line in the second column. Haruach ba hakavod v'akina. Kamashakosov ruach gavoa. A haughty person is called a tall ruach person. Gava ruach. Same idiom in Koheles. Ruach necha shuakina tiyavesh garem. So ego, right? Egotism and jealousy are also middle features. So I see there being if not the same idea, very, very similar ideas emerging from the Gruz middle and Rav Dessler's middle, because both are dealing with our selfness. If you remember my reference to Fred Flintstone, right? The angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other shoulder. Fred himself is in between. The middle is where self emerges. I think that's very important. It's like, according to the Gra, it's not that we are a body and a soul, right? We are the Ruach. Our me generally resides in the Ruach, right? That is where our egotism is. That's where our pride is. And according to Rav Dessler, that's where free will is. And that's where conscious thought is, right? So that everything, it's almost like Freud, except Freud has a superego because he doesn't have a notion of a God who gave us a thirst for a meaningful spiritual life. And when I say meaningful, I want to put a capital M and mention Viktor Frankl, right? There is a conflict between the neshama, right, which is busy up in heaven and dealing with heavenly things, the nefesh, which is down on earth, busy with physical desires and bodily things. And from this conflict emerges a ruach, which according to Rav Dessler is how free will emerges. And according to the Gra, it's more of a synthesis thing that is where the ego is coming out of. But the middle is the ruach, the middle is the self. The self isn't like, it's not that we're in a conflict between body and soul. It's the conflict of body and soul is what is creating an I that mediates. This is a good place to unmute and interrupt and give me a chance to drink tea. Anybody have questions, comments, thoughts? This isn't supposed to be a lecture, you remember? There's a reason why I called it a clause and not a base medrash.
Okay, then. I was precisely thinking that, well, yeah, one has to be very careful about what Freud thinks. I mean, he really goes off the deep end with his work, Moses and Monotheism. It's a lot of fun. But
But that wasn't a part of his writings I was referring to. I was just saying that he also has a triad where ego emerges from a conflict between superego and id. The only
That's
problem
right.
I have with that model is his superego. He has the only reason why people conform to the good is because of societal pressure and parental expectation. And he doesn't have an idea of a person having a soul and wanting to be good inherently. Like a person has physical desires, they have spiritual desires. That never crossed his mind.
Indeed, the case of
But
superego, it's internalizing the father figure and so forth. But you can, I mean, you can use Freud as a good standing for, as a good stepping stone if you include within the superego, like let's say, both societal norms and God Himself. I mean, there's a place to be in a way to be Freudian Jew. Just a thought.
It could
No,
be,
I
but
wonder.
I would
guess,
say
I guess it could be the person standing, between the what you call it, I guess the way the Lubavitch might say the Nefesh Bahamas versus Nefesh Locus.
right.
That might be your id versus superego.
So you'll notice something different between the Gra.
Is it a middle or a
Sorry.
synthesis? It sounds like more like a middle.
Well, the way I see it, it's both a dialectic and a synthesis. In other words, from the conflict emerges a dialectic, and emerges a synthesis. There's a synthesis being that comes out whose job it is to work the dialectic. Right? You have in your head, right, the power to think about both. So in that sense, it's a synthesis. And it only emerges from both coexisting. But, okay, what were you going to say, Ariel, before I talked over you?
Oh, no, it's no problem. I just wanted to speculate. I mean, one wonders, given that Freud's wife was a direct descendant of Chacham ber Nezra, Hirsch's teacher, and his encounter with the Rebbe Rashab, how much traditional Torah thought might have somehow filtered into some of his constructs.
Right, but
I'm always looking for the history of science aspect, I suppose.
So I wanted to mention that the Tanya's model is more complicated than what we're seeing here of the Gra's model. Now, I don't know the Gra well enough to say this is his whole model, but this model is much simpler. The piece he's giving us here is much simpler because he's the Tanya has a little bit of a Petrushka doll thing going, which is very common in Kabbalah, where you have A and B, and inside A is an A and B, right? Like inside of Bina is all 10 spheros, right? That kind of Petrushka doll thinking. So he has a Nefesh Behemoth, Bahamis, and a Ruach Elokis. And inside the Nefesh Bahamis is a full Naran, Nefesh Ruach Neshama. And inside the Neshama Elokis, at least if you're a Jew, is a full Naran. And that little detour about if you're a full Jew is one of the main reasons why I never took the Tanya seriously. But that's my own hang up. But he has two Narans. You have an earthly soul and a heavenly soul, and each has a Naran. Whereas the Gra is saying the Nefesh is the earthly soul, the Neshama is the heavenly soul, and between them you have Naran. And there's no, two Narans, two souls. It's three aspects of one soul. And when Rav Sadia Gaon deals with Naran from an Aristotelian perspective, and he has to deal with Naran because he wrote a commentary on Sefer Yetzirah. So when he deals with Nefesh Ruach Neshama, he's very clear that it's three skills of one entity. The soul is indivisible, but it has three skills, so we use three words.
Is that what leads him to his opposition to the concept of Gilgul?
No. His opposition to the concept of Gilgul is he knows absolutely no source in the Torah for Gilgul. Chazal discuss Gan Eden, Gehenna, Tchias HaMesim. There's no mention in anything that he was exposed to Gilgul. He's very upfront about it. He's convinced that it was brought from other religions. So whatever it is you think about the age of the Zohar, there was at least one Gaon, the head of the yeshiva of Surah, who didn't know any of this being anywhere in Jewish tradition. Not he disagreed. He thought it was sourceless. Any discussion of the age of the Zohar has to deal with that, or at least the age of the Zohar on the beginning of Mishpatim. Shara Gilgul is large. Has to deal with the fact that Rav Sadia Gaon is insisting There's no source in Judaism. No, he just thought the soul's indivisible. The indivisible soul could come back. It's not like what the Ari does with Gilgul, where aspects of the soul come, Nitzitzos come back, right? This is, you can have an indivisible soul reincarnate, just like Tchias HaMesim is an indivisible soul resurrecting. And don't ask me the difference between reincarnation and resurrection.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to Gilgul, I kind of like the theory of like people having fractional souls anyway, because if there's been there's 16 million Jews here, but all the souls were present at Har Sinai. There were a lot of people, but I don't think it was 16 million.
Right.
So there's some theory in the Arizal. I think they saw it in the Lawrence Fine book on the physician's soul healer, the cosmos, or whatever, this biography of the Arizal.
Oh, that's my uncle.
Oh.
Larry. Yeah, Lawrence Fine. Yeah. Jewish geography, always.
Indeed. Well, if it comes to that, you and I are probably related too. I mean, your name is Siegel, which is a Levi name, and I'm a Levi. So.
Okay, so let's drift away from
back to the point. Yeah,
until after I'm
done. Point. So I think there was something in there about multiple theories of Gilgul, and the one that the Arizal had was this fractional souls business.
Mm-hmm.
So there are pieces. So the souls get recycled, but not whole.
But piecemeal, right.
Just
right, and that answers the question.
You can't do past life
yourself.
regression or anything like that because you don't know who had your piece of soul before, and there's no real way to know.
Right.
And the
it also means that each self is unique.
Yeah.
Because you're a cholent, and the and the pieces were in a different cholent last time. So yes, It does work better, and it resolves what the what's it called? It could be that Rav Saadia Gaon was denying reincarnation. He describes it. Well, first of all, he doesn't use the word Gilgul. He uses the word Hataka, but I don't really know if that was his word anyway. His word could have been Arabic. But the what's it called? He describes it as Reuven dies and comes back as Shimon. And some people even say ridiculous things like he comes back as a dog. He could have known Kabbalah, not wanted Kabbalah in his book, because his book is an Aristotelian rationalist for the masses book, Emunas Videos, and was describing what actually was being brought in of resurrection of entire reincarnation of entire souls, and that's what he's denying. He's denying Hataka, not Gilgul.
Just from looking at Ariel's background, and it looked like he was in a subway, and now he's outdoors. Is he on the metro or something?
Yeah. Okay. So that's what I wanted to say about the middle. I want to continue our review of before Pesach before we move on, assuming that we have time to move on. If not, this will be Chazara, and we'll be able to move on next week when we have a little more continuity than a 2-week break. So then we talked about the 3 watches, right? The V'inyan binyan. The Inyan binyan hahu kamasha kasav in brachos. There are 3 watches in the night. And the 3 watches of the night also represents the 3 souls of a person. The first watch, B'tchila Yaldus Shoef L'Taiva, right? A child pursues physical desires. And by child, we're talking about both the little kid will do anything for a candy and fails the marshmallow test, and the teenager who, with their raging hormones. In the middle of one's life, Adam holech v'rodef achar kavod v'ashirus, then you become a professional, a workaholic. You're out for power. You want to be the world's most famous rabbi, and all these other things that we fall into, where we want more control of our environment and we want more wealth. And then you start to see yourself aging, and you realize that everything you're pursuing ain't gonna last forever. And then that is the end of life, when you start thinking about what it is we should have been focused on until now. So that is when, according to the Gemara, the third watch, the baby nurses from the mother as a metaphor for a person connecting back to God, and the woman misaperet in Ba'ala, Isha misaperet in Ba'ala, like it says in Hosea. That person returns to God, and Torah brings to Maisa, like we say in Hashivenu Avinu L'Sarsecha v'Karvenu Malkeinu L'Avodasecha. Notice also that his middle corresponds to the Maharal's middle. No, his soul. I got that wrong. Yes, his middle corresponds to the what's called middle, and he's saying that the Torah that we had in the middle of life, that is dominating when we're busy with ego and thought and self and free will and consciousness, right? That brings you to Avodas Hashem at the end of life. And obviously these are archetypes and stereotypes and so on and whatever, but it does illustrate, it helps bring out the picture of what he's dealing with, how the triad that he sees human beings being built out of. V'hu inyan shel shlosh banim shel Adam Harishon. His next three was the three children of Adam, Cain, Hevel, and Shais, where Cain worked the ground, Hevel worked in sheep, right? He was a shepherd, and Shais was the only one who's said to be in the image of Adam, and Adam is in the image of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when it says that, it means that Shais is the one that's in the divine image. Yadua. So that's, I think, about as far as we got last time, right? So he had this triad of earthliness, heavenliness, and the intellect sitting between them. This was the ground, the sky, and the air. The air, I'm figuring, because Rav Dessler colored my viewpoint, that the air is where conscious thought is, it's where free will is, and therefore it's the one associated with Torah and the Maharal. And Avodas Hashem is the spirit who's busy up there with God and trying to connect to God, and the Gashmias is where we take care of other people, like the Shulchan. Because remember, to me, all of this is represented in the Kalim and the Mishkan. So now he has another Rosh, Beten, and Gvia. So we said that was the head, the belly, and the groin. Shesham Nefesh Ruach Neshama, in reverse order. B'moach Lev V'Kaved, in the brain, the heart, and the liver. Shem Neged Shamayim Va'aretz Va'avir. K'ma shekazu b'Sefer Yetzira. Everything going back to Sefer Yetzira. L'chein Kayin Ish Hadama. Kain's the man of earth. V'amar LeHevel, who we said was the man of air. Lama to over, remember hevel, breath. Over alad masi perech ba'avir. Bereshis Rabbah, he says, go fly in the air. What are you doing on my ground? Kikol asko binyanim chomriyim, because Cain was all about physics in the physical world, iskei aguf. That's why he worked the ground. Hevel asko binyan havalim. Hevel, however, was busy with air things, breath things, nonsense, vain things, vanity thing. I don't know how to put Hevel. We'll just leave it Hevel. Ubone bate knesios. Why does he build shuls? To put up the plaque, right? To self-aggrandize. Also, he gives to charity to be the famous philanthropist. Kamashakasu Bazohar. Al pasuk v'naseh shame. Again, going back to the Tower of Bavel that was going from the valley to the heavens. Naseh lanu shame. It was all about making a name for oneself. B'chol zeh hevel rus ruach. Hevel havalim. Ma yisron la'adam b'chol amalo. She'amal tachas hashemesh. Ba'amru tachas hashemesh ein lo aval lamala. Yeah. Under the heaven, work is pointless, but above heaven, it has value. So if you above the sun, so if you strive for heavenly things, then amelus is of meaning. Tachas hashemesh hu ba'avir, and under the heaven is the atmosphere, the air. Under the sun, I keep on saying heaven. V'chol ha'inyan shel koheles hevel hu inyan shel hevel, and everything that Koheles' Hevel is talking about is the subject of Hevel as the archetype embodied by the son of Adam named Hevel. Kamashakasov Kima Havel Adam Cholamalo. What does a person have with all his work? Ubarayun Libo, and with the ideas of his heart. Shama Kamaruach Canal. No, Berion Yabo, and the ideas of his heart, that is the place of the Ruach. Shua Mal Tachas Hashemesh. Kikol Yamav Gam Ze Hevelhu. So if you have all these nice ideas in order to serve your own mind, your own ideas, your own ego, then it's all Hevel. L'chote nos nasan inyan lesof v'lichnos laseis letov b'nei Elokim Gam Ze Hevel Urus Ruach. And the sinner, it's also Hevel and Rus Ruach to do good because he's doing it just to get the plaque and the fame. Isha sher yitain lo helokim osher wealth and nechasim and property below yesh litenu and is not in control of it. Gam ze Hevel. Gehena Rabos, it's like that all over. Koeles, Kol HaSefer Medaber B'zeh Mizeh. The whole book discusses Hevel. We just lost Ariel. Not idiomatically, literally. Baruch Hashem. Shalataiva hakol b'nefesh, and all the sins of the of desire, that's of the nefesh. B'nefesh asher tochal, the nefesh which shall eat. Ba'omro nefesh, l'rabo says hashota. And the Gemara says there, nefesh includes the crazy person, v'yavo kayin mipriha dama, and kayin v'yavei kayin mipriha dama. Kayin brings from the fruit of the ground, min ha'pchusim, the least of min hadama. Sorry, mipriha dama. Not he brought fruit of the ground. He brought from the fruit of the ground. He picked the worst ones. Sheino no sein lasham rak osan sheino tzarich leichilaso. He only brought the grain he didn't need to eat himself. Hamishuyar, sorry, the flax that he didn't eat himself. Hamishuyar, biz ze shekasov zera pishton. That's what it means when Chazal say that he gave flaxseed. Sheino nechol, which at that point was not yet a source of oil, so it wasn't eaten. Vakol hevi Shekol Inyono Likno Shem L'Tiferes Ba'aretz. He just gave the carbon in order to be, like the big shot. But he made a point that he personally would not lose anything. And that's what the Chazal mean when they say he gave flaxseed. And there they were in the field. Vayakam Kayin el Hevel Achiv. Kayin came against Hevel, his brother, V'yargeu, and killed him. Hayin Kamashikasav Esav, Isho Deyatzayid Ish Sadeh. Esav is described as a man who knew how to hunt, a man of the field. Shazem Mida Shal Kayin. He's a man of a field like Cain was a man of a field. Isha Deyatzayid, Laramos, a person who knew how to trick others. Kamashakasav Kitayid Befiv, Kamashakasav Rashi, like Rashi says on the pasuk Kitayid Befiv, a hunter with his mouth. Val Midaso Shalhev Hevel, and hunting with his mouth. So Ish Sadeh is Cain's feature. Ishio Deyatzayid, that he knows how to trick people, that is Hevel's feature. But Amru Kol Masav Yiyu L'Shem Shemayim, and it says all of a person's acts should be for the sake of heaven. Afilu bit. Well, let's stop a second before I start another paragraph. Jordy, John, anything?
Nope. The thing is, unfortunately, as I told you, I have to leave early, so that's it for now. We're recapitulating the discussion on naval and kings. It's useful. Not at the moment, and nothing useful.
Okay.
So, all right.
Okay.
See you soon. Take care.
Okay. John? Nothing personal, but since this is a stopping point,
Okay.
and 2 isn't really a quorum,
Well,
I'm gonna
Ariel
cut it here.
Yeah, okay. It looks like
I'm,
Ariel.
so, I'm sorry, guys. Take care. Bye.
Now, if Ariel's coming back, I'm gonna continue without you, Jordy.
And that's what the chat says. It is Shkia. I will daven and resume on my desktop shortly. IYH.
Okay. Well, I do everything shortly. A joke you can understand, but somebody who just watches
my
the video.
Wife, yes.
Yeah. So Amru, and they say in Avos, Kol Ma'asecha Yiyu L'Shem Shemayim. Everything you do should be for the sake of heaven. What they mean is everything. Afilu binyanei gashmiyim. So even things of the nefesh, which are physical desires, should be done for the sake of heaven. Is hero al midas hatava biyoser, and you have to just be careful, very careful about taiva, about desire, physical desire. Shekol achilu shtiya yiyu l'shem shemayim. That when you satisfy the desire to eat and drink, you do it for the sake of heaven. So this is a very important point, because what he's saying is he's trying, until now you might have thought he was identifying the nefesh with the Yetzer Hara, that the nefesh is evil. And he's really not. He's saying taiva is very easily brings you to sin, right? And therefore it could pull you down, but you need it. If you satisfy your taiva l'shem shemayim, then then you're serving God with your nefesh. It's not the nefesh. It's not body bad, soul good, right? It's body more challenging to use to serve God than soul is. But also more rewarding. I mean, the only way you could bring Avodas Hashem into this world is if you're anchored in this world. The Indian Kamasha, that's kind of what I was saying about the Shulchan, right? If our neighbors didn't have physical desires, we would have no way to do chesed.
Yeah. And anyway, Kol Asma Saita Marna Hashem and so on.
Right. Tavi Ali Sayed, that's a good example. By the way, on what's it called? On Nishmas. A total digression. I don't know why I started it, but now that I did, I'll continue. So we say Ilu Filu Malishir Kayam Shonenu Iman Kamam Galav. Right? And then later we say Neshama, Ruach Neshama Shavataba, Hein Haim Yodu Viverchu Vishabchu, right? The very mouth you gave me, and they will be the ones that praise you. But didn't we just say that they're not worthy to praise you?
We're saying they're not worthy to praise you, or just say that
they're insufficient to praise you. So
insufficient
the way,
to praise you, that's something else.
Right.
You know, you
Right,
can you can praise up to a certain point, and you know, like you know, it's like why we only have a set of like 10 verbs down at the end of Yishtabach because Moshe only used these 10 verbs or what it was. So
right,
you know,
right. So
if we were going to try to praise you as much as you're worth, then we would never stop.
No, you see, I developed over time a different kavanah when I say it. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's authentic or whatever. It's just what I'm thinking when I say it. We cannot praise you. However, the very design of my mouth, Hein Haim Yodu, not my mouth will utter praises. The existence of my mouth acknowledges your existence. The fact that I have eyes that work, to use the old, example from what's it called debates, from evolution debates, and whether or not the example works is irrelevant. The fact that something as brilliant as the eye exists, whether evolved or not, proves that it speaks the greatness of the creator. So that is the way that's the way I read Hein Haim Yodu. After I'm done, Shubes. Yes. Hein Haim Yodu, not they will utter your praises. Their existence, they themselves are praise of you. It's not exactly grammatically works, whatever, but it's my kavanah. I mean, I'm not stating it as a shot. Yeah, so I like it that way. But in any case, here though, he's actually talking about eating for the sake of heaven. So unlike Esav, who would tzayid befiv, and his whole service was of the ground and of the air, right? We see that Yitzchak is receiving Yaakov is receiving the tzayid in order to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ariel's waiting for me to hit the admit button. Okay. There, see, he's with us.
Okay. Yep.
So, right. So, Kol Ma'asecha Yulishim Shmayim, even the eating and drinking of the nefesh. V'chein achilas hashabasas v'tanugo. So, just as Yitzchak used the food to bring a blessing to what he thought was Esav, to Yaakov, whatever, but bring that blessing from a Kadosh Baruch Hu, before a Kadosh Baruch Hu, so too we eat and drink in order to have Oneg Shabbos, the Karasal Shabbos Oneg, and Yin Kamasha Kasav Rashba, Bagadas Livyasan. It's like the Rashba says in Baba Basra about the Livyasan of Lasid Lavo. Even the neshama is not full without the achila shtia of the nefesh. So that the body should be at rest, settled. And that is what the Rashba says is the point or the meaning of the Seuda of the Livyasan in Mashiach Zeiten. Or maybe it's Tchias HaMesim, I don't know when the meal happens. V'chein kol Seuda shel mitzvah, also every Seuda, make a siyam, so on, right? Using food to serve Hashem. K'masha kazuv al rofei kol basar mafli lasos, like the Ramah says on the Bracha of Asher Yatzar, shekosher ruchani b'gashmi. Rofechal basar, he repairs all flesh. Mafli lasos. What's the wonder that he does? The wonder that he does is that a soul sits in a body. The whole soul, mind, brain dilemma, that is what the Ramah is saying is the Pele of human creation that we talk about in Asher Yatzar. And because of this, you need to satisfy the body in order to reach the mind and the soul. And that's why the Ruchni is kosher to the Gashmi, even with food, that the food, ki aguf nene machol, the food benefits from the body benefits from the food, vaneshama, the kavanas hachila lishmo. And the kavana and the eating, it benefits from the idea of the kavana of eating for the sake of Hashem's name. Kamasha Kazabil Gugulim. This is an interesting because we were just talking about Gugulim. The Ein Chizuk L'Shum Davar Ela B'Achila V'Shtiya. There's no strength to anything. There's no strengthening anything except through eating and drinking. V'Neshama Ger Ba'Olam Hazeh B'Midoseha. Al Kol Ma'asecha Agashmiyim Yu L'Shem Shamayim. The soul. Sorry, what were you saying, John?
Just saying, he's like channeling the whole Aggadah Bagashmias thing, even though he like conscious from what we can tell, he consciously avoided like meeting with the Hasidim.
Right. Well, no, he's actually making a very different point than the Hasidim, because the Hasidim would say that everything has ruchnius built in it, and the way an apple keeps a soul in a body. I think the Chaim says this too.
Yeah.
The way an apple keeps a soul in a body is the spirituality inherent in the apple nourishes the soul. And he isn't saying that. He's saying eating the apple with proper intent nourishes the soul.
Okay.
The intent, right?
Right.
Here, look, right?
It's the other direction, yeah.
Al kol ma'asecha yu l'shem shamayim. It's fed by kol ma'asecha. All your physical desires should be for the sake of heaven.
Right.
He inserts the word gashmiyim in the quote to explain the quote. Buzz tisyashev neshama ba'olam, and that's how the neshama sits in the world. Neshama medura barosh v'shamayim, and the canal, and the neshama rests in the head and in heavens, like we said before, the head, the heart, and the liver. V'zeh sod l'shem shamayim, and that's the secret of what it means to be l'shem shamayim. V'shvil neshama, for the sake of your own soul. V'achibor l'shamayim va'aretz, v'az hachibor ben shamayim la'aretz. Your soul is the connection between heaven and earth. V'zeh sod hatzig hashamayim al har Sinai, and that is the secret of the heavens being brought down to Har Sinai. So the heavens being brought down to Har Sinai is happening in the souls of the people at Har Sinai, because it's the soul of a person that has the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, which is why I'm using the word soul and not any given Hebrew soul word. The neuron of a person is where heaven and earth are coexist. So being l'shem shamayim is what brings the physical and spiritual to one place, the way we had it at Har Sinai. All that was happening was that the people were entirely l'shem shamayim. They were experiencing God directly, whatever, or as directly as is meaningful for humans. And therefore, heaven was down on earth. That's all heaven's down on earth means, is that experience. It's kind of like what the Kutzker says. Where is God in this world? Wherever you let him in.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thought he's giving.
Yeah.
Not exactly the same, but close. I mean, enough that reminded me. Yeah. V'chein berasha. I think we have enough time for this paragraph. No, it's a longer paragraph than I thought. The next paragraph is the flip side of this one, where he talks L'Shem Shemaim. He talks about the Russia bringing heaven instead of, he's perverting the neshama. The Russia who eats for bodily satisfaction, right? That's the midah that sustains him. The ruach has no sustenance. Ki ein lo yisod beguf b'achila v'shtiya. Ki hakol midas hanefesh. L'chein midas haruach ein lo kiyum. Because the ruach is the middle, right? So if a guy's eating just for the body, and there's no kavana for the soul, there's no chiyus to the ruach either, because without the tension between body and soul, or without a connection between body and soul, depending upon whether we're looking at it as a synthesis or a conflict, there's no ruach either being sustained. My time is sheyikra lo kai. My time is shikra lo kai. And this is the reason why lie exists, why falsehood exists. Va'amru in Avos Rabbi Lazar. No, this is Rabbi Akiva. The sheker ein lo raglayim. Sheker has no feet, right? Because if you're living in sheker, notice he's also using. I guess maybe this is why I originally thought of a Dessler the first time I learned with this. He's identifying the nefesh's bodiliness with sheker. You see that? That's why he just went from nefesh and the evil person who's only eating for his body and therefore only sustains his nefesh. So there's no chiyus to his neshama, and his ruach falls away too. Sheker ein lo raglayim. Kanal ms malabein lavona. Ms what kilns the brick, bakes the bricks. Kamasha kazav lakaman, like we said earlier. V'chein amru hai man diyahid afilu ha'inche beise lo mekabel. I'm not going to finish the paragraph. I should just stop here. Okay. So where we're going with this is that where we saw in the Maharal 3 kinds of perfection, and they were 3 kinds of relationships. The Maharal is having us live in 3 worlds. We have 3 aspects to the soul. One is living in the physical world. One is living in the spiritual world. I know it's ironic because ruach is spirit, and I'm using it for neshama, but I don't have a better language. And then there's something, the middle, where, that's caused by existing in synthesis or existing to have something to deal with the dialectic, which is why I think it's the free will point of of Rav Dessler, that is living in the world between your ears. The Koach HaDimyon is building an entire world between your ears. Right? I mean, you sit there, you have an entire universe that you can make for yourself. So you really exist in 3 worlds. And each world, the soul deals with each world with a different name. So the Ruach is in this world. So the Ruach deals with Gashmius. But the Ruach is also what the Maharal tells us is our way of connecting to other people. Assuming that you buy my identification of the Maharal's triad with the Gross triad, if not full identification, at least that they're corresponding concepts. That there's a not complete identification, partial identification, however you want to put it. So that's where I want to go with this. And after this piece, we're going to look at another piece from Derech Chaim on a different Mishnah in Avos, where he talks about Kina, Taiva, and Kavod. So you see that he's dealing with the 3 negative midos, 2 of which we already encountered in the Gra. And how the Maharal deals with it will, I hope, in your minds, buttress the argument that I'm making that's the same three, or at least similar enough threes that we can talk about them in the same breath.